I just wanted a book where you could feel safe.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because that doesn't happen with kids like us. You don't feel safe reading books. You get like, you find a character who's like just like you or close or whatever. And if they're nice kids, something bad always happens. And I don't know if we realize how traumatic reading can be and literature can be sometimes, just to give them an idea of what that's like. And I always say, if the only books you had as a 12-year-old girl was a book like Handmaid's Tale, like how much would that have messed you up? And there's no denying it's well written and it's this and it's that and it's fine literature and all
Yep.
that. But as a little girl, how would that have messed you up while also empowering all the little boys around you?
That's such a good point.
When Eminem says one shot, one opportunity,
Yes.
you
Uh-huh.
know,
Use it. Yeah.
I felt like I had to make it for everybody. Like I had to make it for as large an audience as
Mm.
I could. It's like every line is intentional. It had to be.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Daily Border Crossings podcast, the podcast about othering. I am so excited. I'm here. I'm Samantha Fletcher, your host, here with my co-host, my son KJ Fletcher. Say hi. Hello. And we're super excited about about today's episode, because we have with us award-winning New York Times best-selling author Jerry Craft, whose book New Kid, I'm going to show you my copy, which is very loved and used and thought about, whose book New Kid is the only one to have won some pretty heavy awards. So, Mr. Kraft, why don't you please tell us about what those awards are?
Well, hi. First of all, how are
Welcome
you?
to the show.
KJ, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So yes, I have the distinction of being the only author ever to win. So New Kid is the only graphic novel in history to win the Newbery Medal. And that's the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. It's been around for over 100 years. So it's the only graphic novel to win. It was the second book to win that and the Coretta Scott King Author Award, which is this. So Bud Not Buddy was the first to win those two awards, and my book is the second. And it is the only book in history to win those two and this, which is the Kirkus Prize.
That is awesome.
Yep, and that's a little book done like that, really cool. And the
That
globe.
is cool. I feel like that
Yep,
is the most, it's fancy
it's
in the
fancy.
way that so many awards are not designed in that way.
Oh
So
yeah,
that was really cool.
and then I won like numerous like state awards, and so I have a bunch of them
Oh,
on
wow.
my yeah. So I've been very fortunate.
Gotta keep making room on the walls, I see.
Hmm.
Figure out where you're gonna put everything. Um, okay, so on this episode, this is a special 10 questions with Jerry Craft episode where my son and I have some questions. I want to start with a bit of a backstory though. I'm super excited to have my book earrings on today.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But I wanted to actually start by saying, like a lot of kids, I'm a mom. I have two sons, KJ here, who's in eighth grade, and Isaiah, who's upstairs. He's in fifth grade. And my boys do not love reading.
Okay.
We read though because I say so. Because it's assignments from school, and every now and then they do come across a book that they actually want to read, and New Kid was one of them. And when I brought this book home, I'd seen it at my job. I work at a school, and I'd seen it as one that a teacher was having had for a class. And so I was like, oh, I wonder about this book. Let me read it. And I flipped through a bit, and I was instantly intrigued. And I was like, I'm going to bring that home because each summer we try to read something that we all will read together.
Hmm.
So summer of I think it was 24 or 23. I think it was 24. We started reading it, and every day I had no problems, right? Like I didn't have any
Can
reluctance.
you hold
I
up
didn't
your copy? Hold up your copy again. That always makes me laugh.
I like as I was reading, it's so funny. The very first sticky was probably one of these yellow ones because as I was reading, I get to a page and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is such a neat way to teach that this is something that happens to kids of color who are going to independent schools, right? So I'm getting to this point, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. I'm reading the kids and I'm pulling out stickies and I'm jotting down. And they were like, why do you keep stopping? What are you writing down? And I was like, I think I'm making a note because this is something I might want to share with somebody. I think of a teacher I know that could read this and maybe learn a thing or two. And so I added the yellow ones. I added some blue ones, some of
Now, are they
them.
color coded? Does yellow mean something and blue mean something and orange mean something? Or is it
So
random?
the yellow, you can see there's something written here. Good question. The yellow and blue were just me because I had yellow ones near me and I went back and some days when didn't have the yellow ones, I have blue ones.
Right.
But what's fascinating to me, every orange one, there's a whole separate story about KJ winning an essay contest that's pretty important around because of what he wrote about his feelings around this book. But after he read this book, he wrote the essay and then got contacted because he was a finalist and then found out he was a winner. When he was going to talk about that, he wanted to go back through because he had written this essay and he was like, well, let me go back through and just remember all of the things that were microaggressions, right? So every orange one,
Oh, so KJ's orange.
KJ's orange.
And
So
that's how we met because you sent me his essay and I was so impressed by it. I was like, oh, okay. Like this is, I mean, the awards matter, obviously, but what really matters is when you know how you affect somebody, especially a kid like me who didn't like to read. KJ, I feel you. I hated to read. It was a punishment, you know. And so as I got older, I always liked to draw. And so I was like, well, what would have gotten 12-year-old Jerry Craft to
mm,
read? And that's why I like the graphic novel, first of all. And then I hope this doesn't mess up any of your later questions, but I'm sure you'll come up with new ones. Um, I just wanted a book where you could feel safe.
mm,
You know what I mean? Because that doesn't happen with kids like us. You don't feel safe reading books. You get like, you find a character who's like just like you or close or whatever. And if they're nice kids, something bad always happens. It's that classic Boys in the Hood ending, just as you get that college acceptance letter, you're about to open it and hear boom, 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 and then the letter falls slowly to the ground, and the mama
yeah,
the
unfortunately.
mama comes and opens it up. It's like, oh, my baby got into Harvard. Now he's getting into heaven. And like that's how the book ends or the movie ends. I'm like, that's not a happy ending.
Exactly.
You know, so we don't have those. And I don't know if we realize how traumatic reading can be and literature can be sometimes.
You
Uh,
know, that's a good point about the traumatizing piece, which does touch into a question that I will get to. I don't know if people are thinking about it because, especially depending on who's reading the book, some group, for some, it might be a learning experience. For others, it might be trauma. You're just like, I didn't
oh,
need to read that.
it's trauma. There was a black woman who's a college professor. She's like in her 50s, and she said she got New Kid and she started reading it and realized that she liked it and wanted to finish it, but she skipped to the last chapter and read the last chapter to make
Mm,
sure all the kids were still alive.
wow. That's
And then
heavy.
when she saw that, then she went back and then she knew that she could relax. Because I've had my heart ripped out
Right.
in books, you
Yeah.
know. I didn't like to read in the first place, and you finally see some kid, and it's like, oh yeah, wow, he's close to me, you know. Not,
Yeah.
I never saw me in a book, but he's close.
Right.
And next thing, daddy's going in jail, and the dog's getting run over by a car, and the mom's running off, and
Yeah.
just
It's
like,
always self-direct. And it's so funny too, because I'm like, I know so many healthy, successful black families that ain't dealing with all of that. You know,
right,
it's like who are the people in power? Which was, you know, separate from this, just thinking about from like a movie or TV show standpoint. One of the things that I really appreciated about Issa Rae, for
mhm,
example, was she was putting together shows around like the so many people. It seemed like it's, I don't know if it was the powers that be, because the powers that be only saw black people in certain ways and they weren't black, or if the powers that be were black people who had struggled, but it seemed like whoever had enough money to make a movie was always, it was killing, stealing, and drug dealing.
right.
And I was just like, come, like there's room for those stories. I'm not saying that, but like
That
that's
should be
not
the
the only
only
damn story
room,
I know.
though.
Say it again.
That shouldn't be the only stories,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So if you want to mix it up, you
Please
know,
do.
okay, but you know, I can't be going to bed crying every night.
Right. I honestly, you know, that's I started watching Family Feud before going to sleep, so I can at least have a
Right.
little bit of mindless laughter
That's
before.
why
Cause
I read Spider-Man because even if he didn't win every fight, at least you know he was still going to be alive.
yeah,
You know what I
right,
mean? Like at the end of the day, he was going to win.
yeah,
And that's why when the Black Panther movie came out, we lost our minds.
right. We
People
did.
were like, what are you doing? It's just a movie. No, it's not just a movie. It's not just a movie. I've been waiting my whole life to see this. You know,
Exactly.
this is for Kizzy, and this is for, you know, the color purple, and this is for all these people. This is for Sounder, and this is for Roll of Thunder, you know, like,
Exactly.
and,
Yeah, yeah,
and you and I talked once, and I said, like, you know, I do these conferences like ALA, American Library Association, that have like thousands of librarians, of which I would say 80 to 90% are white women. And I always want to tell to just to give them an idea of what that's like. And I always say if the only books you had as a 12-year-old girl was a book like Handmaid's Tale, like how much would that have messed you up? You know? And there's no denying it's well written and it's this and it's that and it's fine literature and all
yeah.
that. But as a little girl, how would that have messed you up while also empowering all the little boys around you,
That's such a good point. That part,
right?
because I was thinking about how much it would have messed you up, as well as how much it would have messed you up personally, and how would it have shaped how you saw other little girls that looked like you.
Right.
But also, I love that part about empower. How, what did it
Empowering
do?
the
What message
boys.
did it send to the boys? Right.
So if you're the only black kid in the class, which happens a lot.
One of two. He was one of two.
Right. And my son, like my youngest son, well, both my sons, I told him, I said, at some point, there's something that the teacher is going to mention, and everyone in the class is going to turn around and look at you. Whether it's going to be a book on slavery,
Oh.
Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and inexplicably, they're all going to turn and look at you to see what your reaction is. And I think he was in fourth grade, and he came home one day and he's like, "Well, Dad, it happened."
You gotta prepare. If you sit into your kids to these schools, some people send their kids in blind. You're not like me. Like I'm like, I need you to expect
Right.
this, and this, and this,
This is
so you
going
can
to
know.
happen.
Yeah. So okay, you want to go first with your question? Because I was gonna be like,
Oh, they didn't start yet? I thought we were on like question
ah,
nine. All
exactly.
right, go ahead, KJ.
So you just talked. If you went to a private school and you saw that it wasn't the best, I just want to know why would you send your kids to one?
So that is the toughest question I have ever faced.
Mm,
Um, because so I grew up in New York, and New Kid is semi-autobiographical. So
okay.
the house where Jordan Banks lives is the house where I was born. So I grew up in a brown, I grew up in that brownstone where Jordan lives. Um, and so that was in Washington Heights section of New York City. And I wanted to go to art school. My mom and dad did not want me to go to art school. So they sent me to a school called Fieldston in the Bronx. So that was my house right there. All right. And so Fieldston is in the Bronx. And now I'm going there with like sons of dignitaries whereas my brother and sister, a lot of the schools that they went to that were primarily African American, the books weren't as new, the opportunities
Like,
weren't there the same way, you know, the expectations weren't as high, so I had a friend, they said that, his son was a solid C student. He should be proud. And he says, I don't want him to be a C student, like
so,
I want him to be A and B, I'm
yeah,
him for C. Don't be writing my, hey, that's the best he could do. Like, no, push him.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, So some of the opportunities that I got there, it's kind of like the long game, you know? Um, and you almost have to, I mean, you have to have the kind of personality where you can fit because, I've seen a lot of black kids that go and just self-destruct in a situation like that, like they would need to be around other kids who look like them. So it's definitely not for everybody. Um, but it also, with me, mirrored working in the corporate world because a lot of the jobs I had, I was one of, two black uh, adults. You go to college the same way, in publishing, there's not a lot, especially not a lot that do what I do. So unfortunately, it was kind of it helped me navigate what was to come. Uh, but at the same time, I wish that, we were able to find other things as good, but I just wasn't in the position to find it. My parents didn't find it, and I didn't find it for my kids.
So you were like bracing them for what was to come, pretty much.
Yeah, and even business world,
Mm, yeah.
like, when I wrote New Kid, I hadn't heard of the term code switching.
It's funny. Didn't we do it? We did it without knowing there was a name for it.
Right. You just did it.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's like I worked at Time Inc. at Sports Illustrated for Kids, and you go there and you talk about the TV shows that they were watching at the time, Seinfeld and Friends or whatever. And then you go back around your block and you talk about Living Single and
Martin.
Martin,
Yeah.
and I think that's what makes us special is, I grew up being able to watch, the Brady Bunch and Partridge Family. And then, I could also watch Martin and, In Living Color and, you know, The Last Dragon, Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. So I just felt like I could have a more of a full spectrum.
Okay.
And then I was able to tell stories that could reach anybody.
Okay. Next one. Can you talk about your journey? Are you an overnight success?
Um, so again, I hated to read. I always loved to draw. So I had a comic strip called Mama's Boys because
Oh,
I wanted to do a comic strip, right?
yeah.
That was my big thing. Matter of fact, I think I have one here. So hold on.
Okay.
Go away.
Okay. We're waiting for you. Because I think was part of your did I ever hear you say in an interview somewhere that when you try reading things like comics or something, that teachers say that's not real books or something like
Oh
that?
yeah, yeah. Even now, there are teachers that are like, graphic novel.
Mm.
So this is a comic strip I used to do once a week for King Features,
Oh wow.
and it was called Mama's Boys. And this particular one was Yusuf. It was Yusuf and Tyrell and their mom, and the mom owned a bookstore. Yusuf, your pants, I don't believe it. They aren't all bagged up around your ankles. They're the perfect length. Why can't all of your pants fit so well? And the last one, she says, because these are shorts, Ma. So I wanted to do a comic strip because back in the day, you got the Sunday newspaper, you fought, you fought for the funnies, the Sunday comics,
I love the fun. That was my favorite. Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it was Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side and Beetle Bailey and Blondie and I didn't see any black comic strips.
Right.
Later on, as I got old, well, I saw We Pals by Maury Turner, and then I saw Curtis by Ray Billingsley.
Yeah.
Barbara Brandon did one called Where I'm Coming From. Rob Armstrong did one called Jumpstart. Stephen Bentley did Herb and Jamal. So there was only like four or five. So I wanted to do that.
Okay.
And then I noticed that a lot of those books, a lot of those comic strips had anthologies, a collection of their comic strips. So you could see Calvin and Hobbes or For Better or For Worse. So I sent out a bunch of my comic strips in book form,
Okay.
and I got rejection, 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 rejection.
Mhm.
And some of them were like mean, like handwritten,
Oh my gosh.
hey, we don't want this. What are you doing? So in 1997, I said, I don't think I will ever be traditionally published ever.
Hmm.
So I went to the library. I got a book on how to self-publish. And 1997, I self-published my very first book, Mama's
Oh,
Boys, That's
boys.
American Sweet Potato Pie. And it was just a collection of my comic strips.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And
Good for
then
you.
I
Good.
published a second one and then the third one. And then people started coming to me and saying, hey, we can't get published either. Can you help me publish my book?
Oh,
And then
wow.
uh, in 2007, I started my own publishing company. And I started working with other people and I did picture books. you know, and
Yeah,
uh,
okay.
so different things that were important. Black families. This one was called Just Because. This one is Baby Boy, What Will You Be? And over 20 years, I published maybe 25 to 30 different books, like working with authors to publish their books.
Oh, wow.
Mhm. And because I, again, didn't think I would ever get published traditionally.
Mm,
And in 2014, out of the blue, um, I got an offer to illustrate this book for Scholastic called The Zero Degree Zombie Zone.
okay.
And then while I was at Scholastic, they were like, "Hey, do you have any ideas for a graphic novel?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I told them my idea for New Kid, and they gave me a copy of a graphic novel called Smile by Raina Telgemeier. And I took it home and I read it, and the light bulb went off, and it was like, now I know what I want to do with my life. I want to do middle grade graphic novels, and
Mm.
that's
Is
how.
Smile in middle grade?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay.
It's on my shelf here. Yeah, it's over in the end.
Okay. And then and then and then you became an overnight success?
Yeah, after 35 years. Oh, absolutely. Yep. So this New Kid was the first uh book that a publisher,
Yeah,
someone else published
but
that I
not
could
Scholastic.
write and draw.
Okay.
HarperCollins published it.
HarperCollins. Okay.
And then they went on to make history. I'm like, see, I told you.
I knew I could. I knew I could. You could. I don't know if that's what you're interested in. KJ does art. That picture we have in the background is Fist.
Hmm.
During COVID, he was like in third grade and he had some supplies in his room and he was home. We had been home a lot. And one day he emerged with this as an 8-year-old. We were like, me and my husband were like, what the?
Oh, you did that?
Hmm.
Oh, wow. I kept looking. I was like, okay, that looks familiar. What? Okay. That's very cool. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, thank you.
So since the, and I'm like, this 8-year-old. So since then, he's been commissioned by a few different people to do some versions of this. But other than that, like graphic design, I mean, he hasn't started like doing people in graphic novels. KJ does like to write, but he hasn't put those two together. I wonder for in his future if that's a thing. So who knows? Thank you for sharing your journey. I want to ask for people who haven't read the book. So this podcast is called Daily Border Crossings. I started it because when I was in grad school, we had to read a bunch of articles about school and pedagogy and stuff. And there was this one that talked about these group of Filipino students who kept having bad scores and teachers were just kind of writing them off as they just don't know the stuff. They just don't know the stuff. But if you like dug deeper, like there was so much cultural differences to what they were having to do versus what they were, and this was an independent school, this is like somebody researching this public school. And it's when they talked to them, they said it felt like it was they were crossing a border like daily. It was very different. And that light bulb went off for me for this kind of show because you can feel like when you're the only one at a place, if you're the only black person, everybody's white. You're the only girl and everybody's a guy. It's, it's a show that looks at when you've been othered or when you've just been like, you feel like you have to cross the border and be like, assimilate, do whatever with whatever that culture is and leave your stuff outside. And so that's what this show is kind of talking about topics and things around that. So can you talk about any sort of moments like that that come to mind in your book?
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty I know.
My daily border crossing was every day of going to school. So again, I grew up in Washington Heights,
Okay.
and all the people in the area at that time were Black and Puerto Rican.
Okay.
Now there's a huge Dominican population in Washington Heights. And then every day I would get on the city bus, and it was going from, through different planets,
Mm,
you know, and, in at first you get on, and I have it where Jordan kind of tries to look a little tough when he first gets on,
right.
you know,
Yeah. With the
because he's
hoodie, he
in
has
his
a hoodie and
neighborhood.
stuff.
Yeah, because he's in his neighborhood. And then as he rides a little further, The kids from the local public school get on, so he's just kind of, you know, and then it gets into other neighborhoods, and then there's, more white kids that get on, and then he can take out his book and read because he doesn't feel like he has to, be as hard. And then when he gets into the white neighborhood, then he has to almost do the opposite, which is not stand out, because it was weird. Like I went to School of Visual Arts in New York City, and it's so weird, being light skinned with straight hair back in the day. And sometimes around black kids, you look like the white kid, but then around the white kids, you were definitely the black kid. So
Right,
then I,
right.
I would go in the Pearl Paint to get design markers to do my drawing homework,
Mm.
and only be told that they would not sell me design markers because kids like me only use them to graffiti the subways.
Oh no. Ah.
And even though I had my School of Visual Arts ID, they wouldn't sell me the markers. And I'm like,
Mm.
but I need this for my homework. No. And so,
What?
it was always like this jack in the box that just when you felt comfortable, it just sprang out to
Right.
remind you that, yeah, you're not like everybody else,
Mm.
you know. And
Yeah.
so that's what it's always been. It's just when you're like comfortable, like, oh, okay, I can finally that. And then,
Ugh.
oh yeah, yep, that's right. Okay, so no design markers for me, and no
That's just, I mean, that is what it is, right? You go to the best schools, best jobs, all this stuff, and it's like, but you still represent this. So
right,
you can't do this.
right.
What, were you gonna follow up with something?
Mm.
I thought you had to think. Yeah, that scene that you're talking about in the book, you riding the train, Jordan riding the train. One of the things that struck out for me and that I talked to with some colleagues and stuff about is by the time he gets to the neighborhood, you have the one scene where I mean by the time he gets to where the school is, where his private school is, his independent school, there's like a police officer and like this lady standing on the bus, and by then, he's like, let me put away my markers,
Right.
lest they
Hey,
think
I love quadratic equations, don't you?
yes,
You try to
right?
overcompensate the other way.
Yeah, that made me think about
And then he says, by the time I get to school, I'm exhausted.
exhausted, exhausted. And I was thinking about a stereotype threat from the Whistling Vivaldi book. The author's name I'm forgetting right now. But in that book it talks about how he would whistle these classical songs to make people know, like, hey, I know classical music, I'm not a threat.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so him saying the quadratic equations thing, and the scene right before that, the officer and the woman on there, they have the solemn face that you
Yeah.
drew, like they're looking at him like quite a kind of questioning or solemn. And then once he says that, now they have a happy face. It's like,
Right.
oh, we can trust you.
And that's the thing. If you've only read New Kid once, uh, like there's so many things because when I finally got my contract from HarperCollins,
Yeah.
no one really knew anything about me. There were no expectations. I started it in 2017 for HarperCollins. And I'm like, when Eminem says one shot, one opportunity,
Yes.
you
Uh-huh.
know,
Use it. Yeah.
I felt like I had to make it for everybody. Like I had to make it for as large an audience as I
Mm.
could. I had to
That
make
weight,
it,
that weight, you feel that weight on your back.
I had to make it not only for KJ, but I had to make it for you. I had to make it for librarians. I had to make it for teachers so that they can embrace it. That's why the very first line is, this is how I feel every single day of my life, like I'm falling without a parachute. I'm not really falling. That's a metaphor. I learned about them in English class. So,
All these things
like,
are so intentional.
oh yeah, it's like every line is intentional. It had to be.
Mm.
So now if there's an English teacher that wants to have a jump off class about metaphors, to teach kids that because now it's fun because Jordan Banks did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you can do metaphors and how do you make it seem like the kids are, using slang, but they're really not. It's pretty grammatical. You know what I mean? Because I knew that there would be people, oh, I don't want that book in my school teaching the kids Ebonics, because that's what people do.
Yeah. Yeah. You have
So
that backlash.
it's
Yep.
it's it's pretty grammatically correct
Yeah.
by school standards so that it can be used in school settings. There are schools, that are doing one book, one school reads where they bought 1,400 copies and everyone from fourth grade through 12th grade, even the bus drivers read it, and I'll go in and do an assembly or something. But I just had to make it um, as open and accessible to everyone because I just didn't think that I would get another opportunity.
Mm.
I know that it wasn't just for me, but any black cartoonist coming after me, it's very easy to say, well, we tried it with New Kid and that didn't sell. So,
As if that
that's
represents
it.
all the black people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. We're gonna
Yeah.
do another talking dog strip, you know. We're, we're gonna do 8 of those because we tried the black one and that didn't work. So we're going
Right.
back to tried and true. So there
I
was a
really feel like I just want to say, you knocked it out of the park. Then you did. Like
oh, I
you.
knew I had to. I didn't have a choice to. There was a lot of for someone that no one knew who I was, there was a lot of pressure that
Yeah.
I had self-inflicted, self-imposed, because I wanted to make it okay to tell books that weren't about slavery, civil rights, police brutality.
Okay. Okay. I think that you know what that leads to a question.
Okay.
Okay, and then we touched on a little bit of this, I think, but I'm going to touch on it again. So that train ride scene is pivotal. There's so many pivotal scenes. It's just such a good book. But there's a pivotal scene, um, one in particular that I'm thinking of right now. It's the library, the book fair, where you show the heroes and other books for white kids or for traditional or typical kids or whatever phrasing they want to use versus books for black kids. As Jordan is drawing, right, and looking at what he has to choose from. And so the black ones being the more serious, is this idea of showing differences between, between the two. The black kids have the
Well,
struggle or
it's
or or,
it's
or
it's
celebrating
the
yourself. What is
right.
it? All
So
that.
Jordan and his friends are going to the school book fair,
Right.
and the librarian comes over to Drew, who is African American, and it's like, "Here, Drew, I have this book. You're really going to be able to relate to." Oh, she gave it to Maury. You're really going to relate to this kid, Daquel Thomas or whatever. He's struggling and da da, and it's called The Mean Street to South Uptown. And Maury's like, Miss Brickner, my dad is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't know anything about the mean streets of South Uptown. And the reason why I called it that even is, so many times the black characters are in the South side of somewhere, struggling to survive in the South side of somewhere. South Bronx, South Central LA,
Did you see that?
South side of Chicago,
You should say it. You should say it louder. He just
right?
said South Side of Chicago. You see.
Right. So, and it's always a struggle. So I made up this book called The Mean Streets of South Uptown. And for the white kid, she gave him a book called The Magic of the Magical Magicon, a magical adventure. And you know, and even phony reviews for the books. It's like, oh, it shows you uplifting and it's this and it's that. And the black books, to this day, a lot of them, if you read the reviews, it's a gritty urban portrayal of the grit of today's urban grittiness. And it's like, why are
It's
books gotta be
riveting. It's also
gritty?
a riveting.
Right. Why are books gotta be gritty all the time? We can't have magical magicons.
Exactly. Right.
And so I used that South Uptown book in all three books. In Class Act, by Class Act, they were making a movie of it, and by School Trip, it had come out, and they were in Paris, and there's a poster that it's now in French in the French movie theaters.
I need to. We got that. That needs to be our next two. We haven't read those other two, but we have it on our list for sure. Um, and I think I was going to touch on the what you said about the handmaid. So like those kinds of books. Me as a in my line of work, and I do some consulting and whole workshops and stuff like that within the independent school system and sometimes out of it. But I've had conversations, uh, those the struggle books, they have a place, right? I'm not saying that those aren't important, but I've had to have discussions over the years with different teachers who wanted to have their classes read these heavy books, the more serious books pertaining to Black kids, instead of or even before books that were fun and joyful. And one of the issues, the take with that, there's this librarian I know who's always her mantra is black joy before black pain, black joy before black
Right.
pain. So that's something that she tells to readers and teachers when she's doing these workshops and things. And for me, I was just like, so for a lot of these kids, two things, right? A lot of the white kids in those spaces, this is the first real story they're getting about a Black kid is all this struggle, or
Mhm.
or something with police brutality, or it's something, and I'm not saying that they don't need to learn these kinds of things, like that people don't need to know that this is happening to innocent Black people and societal kinds of things. What I am saying is the Black kids in there, which, brings me to another point that like, we've talked about it at home. We don't necessarily need to learn about it, especially in this setting. And so, I'd remind teachers that, just think a little bit about the books you're choosing because not everybody needs that and not everybody needs that to your if this is the first time that this is going to be this Black person is going to be the central character, it
Right.
doesn't
Oh
have to
yeah.
start
Because
with pain and struggle.
it makes them see KJ in a certain light too. He's late for school. It's like, oh, KJ, are you late because your mom had to work the night shift at Waffle House again last night? Because
Right.
one of her four jobs.
Right, right.
And it's
Yeah, good
like,
point, right?
my mom is a professor. Or my mom runs the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And again, it's like if the only books with white characters were about, you know, uh, trailer parks and poverty and fentanyl addiction and stuff like that. But it's not, you know, they get to be Harry Potter, they get to be Greg Heffley, they get to be Percy Jackson. And again, it's not that those stories don't exist, the trauma stories, but that's not all that exists.
Mhm.
So I wanted to add diversity within the diversity.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean? So And so this is the first one, New Kid, where it is Jordan Banks as the new kid in a predominantly white private school, right? So
Okay,
it's his seventh grade year. The second one is called Class Act. Oh, this is actually the one of the translated versions, which is pretty
okay.
cool, like Class A.
It's a
Um,
French.
yep. And so this is the eighth grade year. And Jordan is in it, but it focuses a little bit more on both Drew and Liam.
Oh,
And
okay.
the third book is called School Trip,
Okay.
where they take their class goes on the trip to Paris for a week.
Okay.
And I was on Goodreads reading a review, which all my friends say don't read the reviews, but I did anyway. And there was a teacher who was like, I'm not even going to show this in my class.
Huh?
My predominantly black, predominantly poor kids in my class will never be able to relate to these kids going to Paris for a week. And
Uh,
I'm like, but white kids can relate to going to wizard school,
right.
and flying on brooms and fighting gargoyles and trolls and wizards, and they can
It-
relate to anything, but these black kids can't imagine. She doesn't even want them to imagine that they are able to go to Paris
mm,
for a week. So again, why is she teaching our kids,
good point.
right? And then they released all three of them.
The
Um,
box set.
Yeah, there's a box set now, which is pretty cool. And then also the really cool thing is that it's in over 13 different languages. So this is it in like Albanian,
Wow.
in
That's pretty cool.
German, Russian, Chinese, um, Greek, like that. So it is literally all over the world. I just spent almost a month in Singapore.
Wow. Look at how your gifts will
Yep,
make room
visiting
for you. They're
schools
taking on
and
you play you all
signing.
these places.
Yeah, I went to a bookstore in Singapore and a bookstore in Amsterdam, signing books and going to schools. And these kids are into these characters like it's them,
That's
which
so
is
cool.
really, really cool. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Speaking of the characters of the book, like are all of them like real, like yeah, are all the
Real
characters real?
people.
Yeah, like real people
You
that
want
you've encountered.
you want to specifically know about.
I, I,
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Um, yeah, so I mean, Jordan is me along with my kids when
Okay.
they were in middle school. Um, and the others are kind of mashup of characters, you know, like in Fieldston, there were, so I had like four Drews that I kind of mashed up into one.
Okay.
Uh, Andy was like two kids
Oh, I thought Andy might have been a lot of
that
people.
I mashed up. Um, and then it's funny, like as I started going to schools and doing school visits, I had kids calling me out, Mr. Kraft, how come there's no kid from India in your book? I'm like, I don't know. I never thought of it. I'm like, well, what's your name? My name is Samira. Okay. I mean, not Samira. And there's another girl that was like, how come there's no Muslim characters in your book? I'm like, all right, what's your name? That kind of, so there's Samira and then the girl from India. And I remember doing a book signing in Massachusetts, and this Latino boy, I'm signing books, and he stands really close to me where I could actually feel the heat from him. I'm like, man, that's uncomfortable. And he just says, thank you for Ramon. And Ramon was like an incidental character
Oh,
in,
that's
and I was,
awesome.
yeah, and I was like, wow, this kid like is thanking me for creating a character so he could see himself in a book in a way that I never saw myself in a book, which is that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. When I read it with the I read I in addition to having my colleagues read this, I read this book as a book club with five high schoolers last year, and one of them was a Puerto Rican kid who just kept having so much to say about um the differences between home life and school life, and like having cousins and people like that who speak Spanish and then going to school, like he just had a lot to say about differences. I just thought about that when you um mentioned Ramon.
Yep.
Because you did you have
So were you surprised about like when your kids went to private school? and then they came back and they were like, they told you the problem they were having, and it was the same problem that you were having when you went. Were you surprised in any way about that?
That's a good question. I mean, certain things I don't expect to change. Um, so I wasn't surprised because even though there have been advancements, it's not in the everyday thing. I feel like there's an innocence that goes up until about first or second grade.
Mm.
Mm.
And then, the stuff that parents put on their kids kind of surfaces. Um, and even, they put my son, it was either his photo with another black kid's name under the photo in like the school paper or vice versa. Um, and it was the teachers, a lot of them. There were two black teachers, both there were two women and two men, and the other teachers always confused them.
Mm.
And they looked nothing alike. One of the women was like, almost 6 feet tall. The other was like 5'4", and they'd be like, "Oh, how's your baby?" No, that's the other one. So I put that in where the whole scene with Mr. Gardner, the math teacher, and like, "Hey
They call
coach,
him a coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
hey coach, good luck this year." And it's like, "No, that's the other one." Um, so there's just a laziness to it. And what's funny is, well, not funny, but I go into schools and I'll have a lot of Asian kids talking about that their teachers always call them by the wrong name.
Mm.
No, and they'll be like, "And Mr. Kraft, I'm Korean and she's Chinese," and they can't tell the difference. So one of the things for adults is just take that extra second. If you're a teacher and you know you're going to have these kids for 8 months, learn to pronounce their name correctly.
I can relate to that because my name is not common to white people. It's Kenyatta, and they will always be like, "What? That's your name?" And I would just say that it's Pinata with the K, because that's the only way
Right.
it would stick.
Right.
Like Pinata.
Right. But then it's like, if it's a celebrity, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, well, that's kind of hard to say, you
Exactly.
know? Or you go to Starbucks, hey, I want a latte super duper fruity,
Uh-uh.
blah, 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 blah. They can't
Macchiato,
remember
lava,
their name.
lava.
Right. But they can't remember Kenyatta. And I'm like, so there's a laziness that I just think that if you really want your kids to feel like you see them, you know,
Yeah.
learn the difference if your kid is Mexican or Puerto Rican or Dominican
Yeah.
or from Ecuador. Just take that second because it makes such a difference. Um, I went to school with a kid that we all thought he was Puerto Rican. And it wasn't until high school reunion, like 5 years later,
Oh no.
that he's like, my family's from Belize. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell us that it was just easier? Because I
Mm.
thought I was Puerto Rican, so it's just easier. And it's like, oh,
Right?
I I can't imagine what that was like.
Because that's your identity. You know, every time you cross that border, a
Right.
black
So
Puerto
right.
Rican.
So when you talk about that Jack in the Box jumping out to scare you back into reality.
Yeah.
So for 4 years, every time someone said something about being Puerto Rican, he probably just sunk down a little more you know. So with my books, I just wanted to really take that extra thing, that push for empathy and, how do you say your name? Okay, say it again. Okay,
Mm.
one more time. Is it this? Okay, I got it. I got it. Okay, good. I got it. You
And
know.
then throughout like all the times where it was hard being like, my name is this, not this, or stuff like that. That's why I got so used to my nickname and just being like when they call attendance, they'll be like, they'll pause because I know where my name is on the attendance. They'll pause if it's a sub. They'll go from the first name before me, which is Riley, and they'll come to mind. They'll be like, last name Fletcher, not just say KJ because it's
Oh,
easier.
yeah. Yeah. And again, if it's first day of school, okay. But then if you got to write it out phonetically so you could pronounce it until you get it, I don't think that's too much to ask for.
I don't either. And you know what? I'll say from having been in these independent schools, I feel like it's no excuse. A lot of times you get the same kids that keep coming back, right? So I feel like it's if the teachers are the same teachers that have been there for years, it's no excuse that like if this kid was getting his name mixed up in third grade, it's no excuse for it to still be happening in like sixth grade if it's all one school
Right.
because you got this kid sit down before the school year starts and be like, all right, his name is pronounced like this. We've had this student it keeps getting wrong, like that kind of thing. Like, come on, by the time it reaches somebody get it right somewhere.
And like even as an adult, there are things that happen to me that I'm conscious of. So it never stops. So like I'll be in line, at a supermarket, and then the cashier will be, to the person in front of me, "Hello, sir. Thank you for coming." And next one, "Hi, ma'am. Thank you for coming." And then me, "Hey, chief," or "Hey, buddy." I'm like, "How come I'm not sir?" You know,
Exactly.
we ain't friends. So now I'm buddy or chief or whatever, and then after me, "Oh, hello, sir. Thank you for coming." Me, and you want to
Hmm.
dap me up, and I'm just buying orange juice. Like we ain't friends.
Exactly. Exactly. And speaking of Jordan being exhausted, by the time he from home to there, all that stuff that because it's not just happening at school, right? It's happening all the time, all day, which leads to another question. Glad you just shared that story. So there's two phrases, and we're down to the last three. So there's two phrases. Um, that came up when I, for me, this book is like a research project at this point. But I was thinking a lot about it, and I was thinking about all the different themes just in one chapter. And so I was writing different themes throughout for all the different chapters. One of the things that kept coming up for me, um, thinking of my researcher brain, are one, invisible labor. So like the invisible labor of navigating these two very different cultural worlds and socioeconomic worlds that Jordan deals with. And then the other phrase was the imbalance in effort. So how like Black students, marginalized students from marginalized groups, they often like they have to adapt to dominant norms while dominant group rarely steps out of their comfort zone to adapt the other way. Um, so can you just talk a little bit about those two things? Invisible labor, imbalance, and effort.
So I think that the biggest thing is with two of the characters,
Okay.
right? And so that's Andy and Drew. And I purposely gave them the same name, so they're both named Andrew. One goes by Andy, one goes by Drew. So same,
Mm, I forgot about that. I forgot
right?
about the same name.
See, you need to put a sticker in there. Should,
I think I do.
should I wait? Should I wait for you to write a note and put a sticky note in there? but they couldn't be more different. So Andy is taught like when you go into a room, the room revolves around you.
Mm-hmm.
You own that room. Um, say what you want, do what you want. You are confident. And Drew is just the opposite. As a dark-skinned African American teenage boy, be humble, you know, don't stand out. If you do too much, let me knock him down a level, let me take him down a peg. There's almost you're not confident, you're arrogant. You know what I mean? So there's such a difference. And one of the reasons also that I did this to try to reach teachers is kids see this. My friend's daughter was maybe in the fourth grade, and there were maybe three black girls in the class. And she was like, the way that the teachers talk to them
Mm.
is so much different. It's almost like they think that they need an authority figure in their life. So they can't give them the soft love. They give them the, Janelle, didn't I tell you to sit down? You know, as opposed to, hey, Susie, come on. Time to take a seat. Come on now, take a seat. There you go. With positive reinforcement and
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. And so I remember on when it was Twitter, this librarian called me out and she said, I'm disappointed in the book because there's a scene with the librarian and she gave the black kid the mean streets of South Uptown. And this should have been your time to show that she was well read and well versed and she knew
What?
exactly what to give, and you let librarians down. And then these other librarians were like, no, 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 he opened my eyes because,
Exactly.
and then they started telling their stories. This one woman said that little girl, African American girl, had come and she had read The Hate You Give by Auntie Thomas.
Okay.
And
Yep.
she really liked it. And she comes back, she's like, oh, Miss So-and-so, you have any more like this? And she just instinctively gave her another like police brutality or shooting or gang book. And the girl brought it back the next day. No, I don't want this. And she was like, she didn't want a gang book or a police book. She wanted another book where the main character was like Star, this young
Yeah.
girl who like used her brain to figure out how to maneuver certain things and do. So she related to the girl, not the trauma. And
Mm.
then she realized that she might have been given a disservice to some of these kids in the past by just thinking that all black kids want the mean streets of South Uptown.
And
Mm.
can
Go ahead.
I just want to say something about, because you're mentioning a lot about how like the books are about like bad things.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to say a thought that I had. The more books that are being made about bad things, and I feel like they're pushed out more than anything else. And then people see those, then think that all of us are like that, and then people start to make more books like it, and then like it keeps going. And I think that it's good that you made a book to try to break the cycle. What I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for that. So, like I said, and one of the biggest things about winning the Newbery is I wanted all the black authors to emulate what I was doing. And I know I contributed to a book called Black Boy Joy, which I think there were 17 Black authors. I got to be one of them. And it was all about just happy, fun stories,
Mm.
which is a really good one. And then most recently, I collaborated with fellow Newbery winning author Kwame Alexander, and we did this book. And this is more of a Wimpy Kid style book. So, if you got a kid that love Wimpy Kid, but want characters that look more like them and represent them a little bit more, we wanted to give options. You know,
Yeah.
so Jay is basically a fifth grade version of me. Kay is a fifth grade version of Kwame. And Jay is the best artist in fifth grade. Kay is the best writer. And every year they have a storytelling contest in their school, and they both enter. And then when they realize that each other has entered, they become bitter rivals and they try to sabotage each other.
That's
And
fun.
because Kwame and I are, we have a rivalry, a friendly rivalry. But we also want to show that you can be rivals and still root for
Yeah.
um, your opponent, because Kwame won his Newbery in 2015. That showed me it was possible to do it.
So, so many things that got sparked, but I'll try to keep it short. The thing that you said about like, well, what KJ said about this cycle keeps happening.
Mhm.
They think that people want this kind, so they put out more of that kind, and the powers that be are like, oh, this is the black story. Because I'm convinced that um a lot of the people who are in charge, their circles are with people that look like them. So they don't know, they don't have a lot of, you want to say something?
Yeah, and then a lot of people say that it's the same. That thing happens with Tyler Perry movies. What they say.
What
Boy,
about the
that
same
I,
things?
I was
Yeah.
I was trying not to bring him up because I know, like, I respect what he's done and to get to the level, as a businessman. But that last one with Taraji was every bad thing that could ever happen in 90 minutes. I didn't get out of bed for 3 days because I was like, the cop is outside, and then after I get arrested on the way to the police station, I'm gonna be robbed. They're gonna jump in the police car and steal the car and kidnap me and rob me.
And then I would go to
And
work. I go to work, and then I can't get my check, and then my boss is yelling at me, and then my boss gets shot, and they think I did it. And
and
then in the end, the kid was dead.
I never
Oh,
made it to the end.
okay,
I
okay.
was like shaking. I was like in the fetal position, just rocking back and forth in the corner. And it was just every bit. I'm like, can we smile?
But the
And
thing,
then
okay, and they keep making people keep supporting these.
and then because it's a black movie producer, they probably think, oh, this is relate. This is what all black people. Because Tyler Perry, probably one of the biggest black producers in the
Yeah.
industry right now.
And to
So it
have
seems like
like
it's
47 TV shows,
mhm.
Right, right.
like he probably more than just about anyone else shapes our
Culture.
culture and our view. And it's in anyone, like if I was a character in a Tyler Perry movie, I would be the villain that beat his loyal wife and cheated and beat the kids. And I'm like, no successful man is ever the hero.
Yeah. Right, right, right. Now you listen, you are inside my head and everything. I'm waiting for again, I feel like your book, the Issa Rae stories, like like when I watched Insecure, I'm like, oh, this is me and my friends after college.
Right,
Finally.
right.
Ain't nobody, the black guys. None of them was selling drugs. None of them
Right.
was shooting.
Girlfriends,
Yeah. Figuring out life, dating.
Martin,
Yeah.
you know. And look how much flack that the Cosby Show got. Like, oh, when's there ever been a black doctor married to a black lawyer? Okay, it happens.
Yes.
Like
Right. They're like,
that
this show is unrealistic.
that's where you draw the line,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
And it's for
the
even like
world.
for me living, I grew up in South Carolina. My parents were divorced or whatever. But my husband, when I moved to the Maryland area, living in PG County, the amount of just like in this county itself, like my sister-in-law, she and her husband got married, they were probably around 26 or something. She's a PA. He's like IT, he was with IBM at one point. But here you have this medical person, this tech person. Then you have all these federal government workers. His god brother does something high up in IRS, and his wife was a principal. And regardless of the jobs, there are all these successful marriages, and the amount of black men that are take at these games with their kids, even without moms, the amount of black men present, I'm just like, who's telling this story? Because this is this
Right.
is a reality for so many people. There's success stories, and the men ain't cheating, and the women ain't cheating. These things do exist. But to KJ's point, and to your point, these keep the bad stories keep getting
Right.
perpetuated.
And it's not that every show has to be the height of success and this that like
Right, right.
Atlanta, it's the way that you tell the story. Atlanta was one of my favorite series of all time.
That show's hilarious.
Even movies like They Clone Tyrone, I thought the way that it was done,
Yeah,
like there's just an intelligence to it that's just not cranked out.
yeah,
And I just think that, the Get Out, the Jordan Peele movie. So
yeah,
it's not that everything has to be rainbows and unicorns and happy, but just give something a little different, you
right.
know?
And everybody ain't gotta also be, I was naming these levels of success. Everybody ain't got to be the college graduate, or like have some big six-figure job, but there's still happiness going on.
Right. There's still a day-to-day like, oh, okay. Wow, like they just hit
Yeah.
the mark.
Like an example, I remember watching Power. I watched Power. Everybody was
Mhm.
into Power one time, that whole series. And Power was out around the same time Insecure was. And so I just remember watching Insecure and being like, wow, this is like such a breath of fresh air. And there were two completely different kinds of shows, but I was just glad that there's also, as much as I enjoyed Power, I did want to watch Family Feud before I went to bed. But with
Right.
Insecure, I didn't. I was like, I don't have to, because I feel it when somebody's dying, when they're shooting and somebody, is bloody and somebody just died all the time. Like you feel that. Um, so yeah, so that, and then the piece where, what else did you say? You said something about the kind. The telling of the like the teachers who treat the kids different in the class. I know of a story not long ago, and this was with the somebody who was black, because I do feel like the way the dominant culture works, you don't just have to be a white person to have adopted some of these kinds of actions and behaviors and mannerisms that don't necessarily treat kids of color the right way, because you've done it so long that you may not even notice it. But recently I was involved with a situation where there was a black boy who did walk around with a lot of confidence and stuff, and it was a black adult, a black adult who was like talking about, there's a certain level of, this person should be knocked down a bit, or
Right. He's got too much
there's just,
bravado.
there's just too much. Like, what is he? Why is he always this way? Or what's this? This seems like some arrogance. I was thinking, well, the child is confident, but it's also the child's in middle school, and I'm glad that he's feeling this way. Like, let him figure out who he's gonna be. But why are you trying to knock this boy down?
But again, if he looked like Andy, oh, that boy's going places.
Right, right. Exactly. So try to gently push back. Sometimes, as the saying goes, and be your own people. Okay. So we just kind of wrap up
I
on
know
this.
we only on question two.
We on question 8.
Oh, okay.
So this one is kind of combined, and maybe you've touched on it, but like, who was your intended audience, and what do you think teachers can learn? So I guess it's two questions in one. Like, who's
Yeah,
your
like I said, I tried to make it as broad as humanly possible because I
yeah.
didn't think that I would get another opportunity. And then so it was a one book deal for New Kid. And then initially my publisher, they wanted two more books, but
Hmm.
not necessarily sequels. They were
Okay.
like, would you like to do another school somewhere? Would you like to do other characters? And I said, absolutely not. It's got to be these characters because
Good for you.
whenever I go to schools, if I say name a black character from literature, children's literature, it's like Jeopardy, like doo doo doo
Yeah,
doo.
I was like, who do they?
Miles Morales.
Miles Morales.
But again, I usually say not a superhero, and then it's like, oh, the best friend from but they don't have a name. It was like,
Right.
oh, the kid that lived across the street from the main character in blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that I could get to that level without uh having them in three books. So I wanted
Good. Yeah. To keep extending Jordan so he know who.
Jordan Banks, Drew Ellis,
Yeah.
and even Liam Landers, but I wanted them to be household names.
Okay.
Um,
You,
so
you know,
that,
I love what you did with Drew. And there's a scene, another scene, but at the end when Jordan finally stands up, by the time Jordan gets to there, Drew has already been. If you pick up New Kid and you just open to the chapter where Drew is kind of smart mouthing a little bit, you could easily just or kind of talking back or kind of just like making a joke about financial aid, just like you could easily be like, oh, that's a bad black kid,
right,
that's who these kids are. You gotta have the whole story, but I love that you showed that because you see the evolution of that. Drew was just tired of
right.
being confused, being talked to in these weird ways, and I we haven't gotten to that as in reading this book with my colleagues, but I really want to because it says a lot about
I
sometimes
can't
you
tell
see this
you,
black kid that you're like, well, this kid always got an attitude, or this kid always has a problem. How did this kid get to that point?
right.
You know?
I can't tell you how many times I have gone to schools and the teachers have pulled me aside and been like, okay, see the kid there? That's TJ. You got to watch him. He's a handful. And now I'm guarded. But all right, so we're gonna start drawing. Who wants to hand out pencils? And TJ is like, me, and just like into it, and just like it's like, oh, okay. If you hadn't warned me, I'm thinking this is the best kid in the class because he's
Exactly.
super attentive. But if you go in thinking like one of my horror stories, and this is before I was comfortable and confident enough where I would have spoken on it. But I think I was in a school in Philly, and I go in and same thing, oh, that's Devontae. You gotta watch him. And so I go up and I'm start doing my presentation, and a lot of the other kids are talking.
Mm.
Devontae gets up and says, hey, yo, shut up. Right? Because he wants to hear, here come the teachers. That's it, Devontae. You're out of here. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you? He was the one that was actually listening.
And he was the one that was making it, helping me be heard.
Right. Right.
Like
But
y'all invited
now,
me here, and
right.
he's helping me be heard.
Right.
But that's all
But
they see. Like, how y'all ain't see why he did what he just did?
right.
So how come nobody else had to get out because they were talking so much?
And then can I
Right.
ask you Yeah, has a teacher ever said to watch out for a white kid?
Very rarely. Not definitely not in the same way. Like I used to go to teachers when I would have an assembly and I would say, "Hey, if I have to playfully pick on kids, give me a couple names." And they'll be like, "Oh, that's Emily. She's a talker. Oh, that's so and so." And I used to do that because and I would write their names down. And one day it just so happened that the girl who they told me about was literally turned around in her seat, yapping up a storm. And I went, Emily, pay attention. And she went, and she was like,
How's he know my
how does he
name?
know my name? Like it just. So I used to ask specifically, but it wasn't volunteered the way that they did with some of these other kids, with some of these black kids, where they'd be like, all right, now I'm telling you, you're gonna have to watch out for that one and that one. And nothing.
I hope I don't know if you ever find a way to deliver that message, like before you go and be like, I appreciate that warning, but actually he was great. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like being able to let them know I didn't have the issues that you had.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot. I was doing a school presentation and the kids were laughing because I joke around and very lively during the presentations. And this principal came up, took the mic from my hand and reprimanded them for being disrespectful and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I told a joke. They were laughing. And he literally came up on stage like three times. And by the
Mm,
third time, I didn't even want to say anything because I'm like, if I say something funny, like he's looking for stuff. You know,
yeah,
if
at
I'm
that
not
point.
complaining, if I go, hey, Mr. So and so, can you quiet them down? But it was exactly the way that I wanted them to react. And
Mm,
after the third time, he was disrespectful.
it was him.
How you gonna take the mic from me three times and then I gotta pick up and be like, so
Right?
anyway, what I was saying,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, this speaks so much to culture. I'm convinced that cultural competence and a lack thereof is a bigger problem than anything else. You can talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. They're trying to get diversity. Nobody's arguing. I think that you want to be equitable. People want to feel included. All the things. But to me, this is like not enough of an understanding of different people's cultures. And what I mean by that, because a lot of the schools that I deal with anyway, after the white community, the next largest population within that school is generally African American. And these schools have been around for years and decades, but still African American cultural things, the way the way kids might be excited about a NFL game over the weekend. They come back and they're like, "Yo, well, like that was my team, your team, like yo, you did this," and then they like all excited, pushing each other, like play
Right.
or dapping up and all this stuff to somebody else. It's like, oh, they're fighting,
And also a lot of they might think that trash talking is bullying.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Absolutely. And it's like we go in on each other.
Right.
You
So that
know,
I
like
definitely remember what it was one of the things when I was a new teacher in these schools. So there was like a race or something outside. I'm teaching kindergarten. And black kid won. So he comes back, he's like, I beat y'all, all excited. Instant reprimand, right? It's like bragging, no need. We don't do bragging. And I'm like, this kid just actually won the race. And the
right.
other kids in the class would be like if he said it more than once before the teacher, got to him, well, he's bragging. They'll say to him, you don't need to brag. And I remember the first time this happened, I'm like, let me just kind of see how this plays out. And the kid just didn't respond to that, was just like, but I won, I beat you, I won, and they're like, and then other kids join in, you're bragging. Okay, so now this kid's outnumbered. So now the teacher comes in, and rather than the teacher say, which I started being the teacher to speak up and say, well, actually, did he win or lose? And they're
Hmm.
like, well, he won. Okay, well, he's proud of that. Are you proud when you win? But before I would start to interject and do that, the other teacher would get in and instantly side with the majority and say, such and such, that's right. We're not bragging. Bragging is not necessary. And he's like, but I won. I'm just glad I won. Yes, you won, but it's over now. You don't need to talk about it.
Right.
I'm like, do we encourage them to, is that kind of thing?
Now, I've seen the opposite. So I was in a school in Stamford, Connecticut, and I said, some of you would rather say how you failed than how you succeeded.
Mm,
And this kid said, yeah, I just flunked my science test last week. I said, see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Why would you say that? Well, I did. I said, but if you got an A, would you tell anyone? Maybe my mom's. I'm like, why wouldn't you tell your friends? Well, because I wouldn't want to make anyone feel bad.
that's it.
If you
That is
saying
pervasive throughout. Don't make somebody else feel bad. How about we teach the others
to
to
step up, I said, if you're hanging out with a group of guys that will feel bad if you got an A, you need to hang out with new guys.
right?
So
Yeah,
what?
you
It's
need to be able to
okay.
be proud of
So
that.
the teacher's
Period.
like, that's the spirit,
Yeah,
brag about, not winning the race because that's bragging. But if you talk about how you flunked the test
right.
and he didn't get checked, I checked him on that.
Good for you. I'm glad you did it, but it's also interesting. These are these little cultural things that they don't see that they're helping perpetuate. Because these kids are going to grow up in society and have these expectations that are happening at these schools. And they're not seeing, attending to somebody's tears differently than other people who are expected to be tougher, stuff like that. But
Be
like in your
humble.
example with go ahead.
Be humble.
Uh-huh. And so yeah, yes, you don't want to make somebody else feel bad because sometimes it is like, the black kids getting the A's maybe more than some of the other kids. And it's like we don't need to share what grade we made. We don't need to share. When can we share? Like when can we be proud of it and actually, when can the lesson be to everybody else? Hey, you know what? He studied, he worked hard. We should all be working hard. We should all be, like, what do you need to do if you want to get that same grade? What can you do? Things like that, like turning this narrative yeah, like
I
not
know,
being able to be proud.
I know that teachers at the school I go to now, they'll put up the highest test scores. They'll put everybody's like whoever got like top five in each class. They'll
So
put,
we let sorry, I should say. We don't we're no longer in the independent schools. He's in a predominantly black school in our like it kind of like a neighborhood school, except it's a tag program, talent
but
program.
it's public school.
It's public school. We're in public school in PG County. And it's so many different so many differences. But yeah, and you know what? It actually surprised me because the first time when I saw what he's talking about, like the top grades, and they're attaching the names to them, right? And when I first went in and saw this, I was like, because I've been working in independent schools for so long that I was like, oh wait, they can't do that. I'm like, somebody's gonna feel bad because their name's not up there. And
But then instead of that, everyone would clap up the people who
Ah,
they did
good.
a good
And that
job.
gives others something to look for. I want to be up on that list.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're in Prince George's County?
Yes.
That is the first place where my Mama's Boys comic strip used to run in the newspaper there.
get out of here.
And that was the first place in my life I ever got banned from. Somebody didn't like one of my comic strips and then wrote to the paper and then they pulled my comic strip
Uh-huh.
and wrote a letter of apology. And then I ended up writing an op-ed piece where I'm like, this is what was behind that. And yeah,
Well,
that's my
that was too interesting first, so I didn't see the second one coming.
yeah, yeah.
It's I don't know who would have done that, but because it's like the county is gotta be not 80, I think 80, 90% black.
Yeah.
Well, this was like 25 years ago.
Oh,
It's been black
it's
forever.
been black for a long
Because
time.
it's right next to DC in
Uh-huh.
DC. Yeah.
But it wasn't black always.
But that was
Maybe 20 years ago, probably, yeah, because your dad, we're in a,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They definitely pulled it.
Yeah, unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad it got, glad it started here.
Yeah, yeah,
We're at our
yeah.
last
So
one.
I've been used to it for a while now.
Yes, you wanted to ask that last question?
Okay. To end everything off, what message do you want to say to all the Jordan Banks out there?
Um, Boy, that's a tough one. It's one of those where you find your crew, you know. And I don't care if it's Dungeons and Dragons. I don't care if it's sports. I don't care if it's kids who like to read, kids who like to draw. There is such a peacefulness to be around people who don't judge you and you can just sit around and be yourself. If you and I are
Mhm.
hanging out and you just like, hey, Mr. Kraft, who would win, Batman or Black Panther? Like, if that's what we want to talk about for 25 minutes, and that's what we're going to talk about, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, I did a program at a library, and there's these three young black kids, and they're just standing there. Everyone else is sitting around, and they're listening to and they're just frowning. And then two of the kids leave, and then the kid in the middle looked and made sure they were gone and then ran over and said, Mr. Kraft, will you look at my sketchbook? I did these drawings. And that to me was like, it was sad that he had to wait for his friends to leave. That the friends were probably like, oh, why are you drawing these cartoons? That's stupid or something like that. So he didn't feel comfortable to
Mm,
show. So find the people who celebrate you, not just tolerate you.
nice. Nice. Thank you. I'm gonna edit this probably
Oh,
out because I do have two questions. Sorry,
Oh,
just real quick.
nice stretch. I get up
Yeah,
stretch.
yeah, you can stretch.
Okay.
I think for me, I know that was the last question for, but I just have two more.
well, I got
Any
to stretch too. How come I don't get this? Oh, look at this. This is called 5 Minute Marvel Super Stories, and I did a 6-page Black Panther story. So that's my Black Panther
Oh,
in
awesome.
there. So it was cool that this kid who always wanted to draw for Marvel Comics ended up being able to draw Black Panther for a book.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
That is
Okay,
pretty cool.
go
Just
ahead.
I wondered if you had any maybe I'll edit this out or put it before. 'Cause I had asked a two-parter and I didn't follow up on the part about like when I asked about who it's intended for. But a message for teachers, and maybe there's some messages throughout, like take that extra time to know names and stuff. But is there anything like you think teachers in these schools should know and or parents? Parents of kids of color. Well, actually any parent, I don't know.
I think that when you're dealing with kids of color, there's so much of thinking that they're already grown,
Mm.
know, uh,
Mm.
because kids today, I mean, I was Jordan Banks, so I was 3'5", and all my other friends were like 5'5", and especially when physically you're big,
Hmm.
I think that certain teachers forget that you're still 12.
Okay.
And
You know what I
then
mean?
like I said, I said this earlier, but when all the narratives are about how black people, when they're young, they're doing crime, they
Right.
they might think that you've already done some of this stuff, so you already know stuff that you shouldn't know at like your young age.
And
Oh
I,
yeah.
you don't know it anyway.
Yeah.
They assume you knew.
So there are other books. So other books, and one of the things that I think that the success of New Kid, there are uh books. So this is Leon the Extraordinary by my buddy Jamar Nicholas. So there are starting to be more books where the kids are just kids. Weirdo
Yeah.
by Tony Weaver Jr., which
Okay.
blurb, which I really liked. It's a great book. Um, Swim Team by Johnny Christmas,
Mm.
and then Stunt Boy by Jason Reynolds and Raul III.
Mm. We know some Jason Reynolds books, but we don't know that one. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny though, Jason Brand, but really
Yeah.
a long way down.
Oh, wait now. Have you ever heard of Nate Creekmore? He used to have a comic strip called Maintaining when I was back. Actually, I was a journalist before switching to education.
Yeah,
He
I
ran there for
remember
a little
him.
while in Augusta, Georgia.
Yep, I remember him.
Yeah, I don't know whatever happened to him.
It's rough getting comic strips out because back in the day when I was trying to get my Mama's Boy syndicated, it was like every newspaper syndicate had their one black comic strip.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And then when Boondocks came out, I was like, well, they all got their one, so I'm going to give up on that because you got to wait for them to retire or whatever, and they just never leave. So
Right.
I got out of that industry.
Yeah. Okay. The other one, and final for real one was just like success, having success. Because KJ was talking to me about this before. I actually could let him ask this question.
Okay,
Like,
I'll ask.
okay, can you name?
Because I'm I'm a good writer, I believe, and but I don't know if there's money in future where that is, and so like if there's a future where I can live happily, um, so like how long did it? Well, you said it's like 35 years.
Well, yeah, so that doesn't mean it would take you 30 years, right? Because there are things like when I first did my Mama's Boys book, there wasn't print on demand. I had to order 2,500 copies. I kept in my garage to sell, and you know, you couldn't get online sales back then. This is like 1997. Um, I think that, there was no social media to promote, you know. Um, I would say if you can find what your lane is, like I get mad at other authors, buddies of mine even, they're like, "Oh, I have an idea. It's like the hate you give," but I'm like, "No, no, that's been done. Do something else." You know? And it's weird. I mean, I'm proud and happy that people say that New Kid is groundbreaking. But at the end of the day, it's like a black kid who went to private school. Like that book shouldn't have been groundbreaking in 2017, 2018, 2019,
But it was, huh?
but it was. And I'm like, okay, I will accept that. Um, but it's sad that it was at that time, so that it's still so limited to those things. Um, but look for different kinds of writers. That doesn't mean that you have to write graphic novels or books. You can write screenplays. You can do, all kinds of things. Write for TV shows. You know what I mean? So look to see what those areas are like where you have some creative uh, output, So it doesn't just have to be that you have to sit down and write a book.
But yeah, thank you for real, for real.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft,
You're welcome.
for your time. Thank you for this insight, though. I don't think a lot of people know what goes on in private schools. I think people, well, from what I hear, people are sitting their kids, they're like, oh, they have so much access, they have so much access. And the longer I've been in it, I'm like, but at what cost? And like, what do you need if you're gonna sit them there? I feel like this book helps you know the things you need to tell your kids to prepare them for and what to expect and stuff like that. There's just so many different ways I think that this book is helpful. Um, and I just think a lot of people just don't know what it can be like to be the only or to go to these places. And I also think that if you like you got your cousin that go to private school and you go to public, you think, oh, they all right, they good, they out there with all the rich people and all the access. But sometimes those kids ain't good, right? Sometimes they need other people to talk to. So
And you know
I
what? You asked about what I would say the faculty and stuff. It's to actually talk to the kids. I remember doing a school visit and there was a black kid in the class, white teacher, black kid, and he was reading my book like at recess or lunch or whatever. And the teacher said, "Oh, would you like me to buy a copy of the book and Mr. Kraft could sign it? You can have it." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, thank you. No, I'm good." And then he, walked off or we walked off, whatever. So if you left it at that, you could walk away saying he's not grateful, he
mm,
doesn't like to read, he's
right,
this, he's that, all these negative things. And then we went over and it's like, hey, just out of curiosity, he's like, Miss, I can't be seen in my neighborhood walking around with no book, you know? So there was so much more
mm,
attached to it,
yeah,
you know? So then if you know that, you could say, oh, I'll buy it. You could keep it at school. Or, you just put it in your bag and take it home. Or just something other than him just walking down the street reading a book where he thinks he's going to get beat up. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, so if you take a moment to hear what their story is
yeah.
and you put that time in, I think you can be more successful.
Okay, okay. Perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and for our 10 questions.
Mm.
11, 12, a little tangent
Yeah,
here
10
and there.
questions, all way A, B, and C. And my sub question, my follow-up question, it was like, girl, there's like 45 questions.
Count and figure out how many there are. There were some things you said that like, I was like, I gotta have a follow-up. But I didn't, you never know where it's gonna go.
There was always more. There was more in her head.
Yeah, yeah.
Over my head. Thanks, KJ. Um, but yes, thank you so much for being a guest. Keep doing what you're doing. This is great, and I appreciate you taking the time with us today.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.